Welcome to It's a Woman's World, a show which discusses any and all topics under the sun from a woman's point of view. Hosted by Nadia Jordana. And here's Nadia.
Hello and welcome to It's a Woman's World. I'm Nadia Jordana and co-hosting with me today is Junita Cathy.
Hello, how are you?
Good, how are you?
Good to see you.
Good. We're here today to talk about backyard composting and organics recycling. Here with us to help us with the discussion is Jean Buckley from Ramsey County.
Hello.
Hello, how are you?
Good, thank you.
And Kellie Kish from City of Minneapolis, I understand.
Nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
Well, let's get the ball rolling and talk a little bit about backyard composting. Most people are doing that in their homes. If they have a house, oftentimes we're backyard composting. I don't know if you do it. I have been doing some of that at my home. What are some of the things we need to know about that?
Well, on backyard composting, you usually can put some of your household food scraps in there, and a lot of it's used for if you have a vegetable garden and then raking up your leaves or your grass clippings. But there is a little, it can be a little tricky for people sometimes because you have to have the right mix of stuff, browns versus greens. You have to water it, you have to mix it up. And frankly,
it can't be cooked foods either, can it?
Yes, it can be cooked foods,
can.
but it shouldn't be meat or dairy.
Okay.
It should really only be your vegetable scraps. But if you've cooked your vegetables, that would be fine.
Okay.
But you don't want to be grease or fats or things like that. So you have to be a little careful about how you're doing it. And people who are gardeners can usually figure it out, but even sometimes they have a pile that just doesn't turn to compost like they would like. The good, rich compost that you can then spread on your garden or in your yard or things like that. So there are people, master gardeners, or we have other tip sheets from the PCA that have helped people diagnosing common backyard composting problems. But again, you can only put certain things in there, and so we want to encourage people to compost in their backyard if they can, and you can build your own compost bin or purchase one at any garden center if you'd like, and sometimes that makes it a little easier.
Well, and then if you're at home too, there are these little containers that you can use. I have one at home for your kitchen scraps and things like that to use.
Right, I have one here. It's a nice little bucket. I think it fits well on a counter, and you can just scrape things in here. But the problem again is that you don't want to be putting meat or dairy or some of those kind of things in there and taking them out to your backyard, because then it's not going to break down the way it should. You could attract rodents, things like that. So that's why we're now starting to do organics recycling, and that's something people can include more material in: the meat, the dairy, paper that can't be recycled, like your paper towels or napkins or
That
things
can't
like
be
that.
recycled?
No.
No. See, that seems like that would be something that you could recycle.
Right. We probably should talk about what can be recycled and what can't.
Yes.
Another show, but just quickly, if it can tear easily, then we really don't want to recycle it. It's already been
Okay.
recycled too many times.
Oh.
So other examples would be like your paper egg cartons. Those have been recycled to the maximum level, and those should be going into a compost container. Tissue paper would be the same thing.
So those things are compostable and
Correct.
shouldn't be recycled.
That is correct.
Can we talk a little about, I know for a while people would put a lot of their food products in their garbage disposal.
Yep.
Can we talk a little about what should go in the garbage disposal and what should go into the compost? And then what happens with whatever is in our garbage disposal? Does that get reused or does that become trash? How does that all work?
Well, right now, things that are going in the garbage disposal are actually putting an unnecessary burden on our wastewater treatment facilities.
Okay.
Whereas if we start collecting these things in our kitchen pails and then either bringing them to drop-offs that Ramsey County has open, or certain cities, and now the city of Minneapolis is implementing a citywide curbside organics collection program. Those actually will go to an industrial facility where they will be composted back into compost, which is a valuable soil amendment that makes healthier soil, helps reduce erosion potential of your soils, and also reduces the need for watering of your lawn, your garden, and helps grow healthier plants.
versus, again, like you said, going down the waste treatment facility where they have to treat it.
Yep.
So we would like to encourage people not to use their garbage disposal. I know it's convenient and people have kind of gotten used to it, but the plumbers all say it can often be a problem. And so
Yep.
we just as soon have people start looking at putting all their food scraps into a bucket. You have to use a compostable bag. This is not a plastic bag. This is made from plant-based material. Kelly has an example.
And then for them to actually be accepted and you know that this is an item that's going to break down, it has to have this compostable logo on it. This logo means that this product has been certified to break down in an industrial compost facility, and that it's going to safely break down in the time period that normal composting happens.
It's good to be able to recognize that.
Yep, and other products now, from cups to to-go containers to all sorts of food service items are being certified for compostability, and those are the items that the compost facilities will accept. Now, there are items that, you know, they used to accept, for example, milk cartons or juice cartons that everybody thinks are wax lined, but that actually hasn't been the case for many years, and they are lined with at least 2 layers of plastic that do not break down in the composting process. Those can now go in the recycling carts, but they can't be going into the organics.
Yeah, see, it gets confusing, doesn't it? So milk cartons, you know, and soup often comes now in those cartons that you can pour, or broth or things like that. We want those in the recycling bins now.
So with the new program that the city of Minneapolis is rolling out, are you doing some sort of mailer to every resident so then they at least have a quick tip sheet that says, hey, this is what it means to compost, and this is what you should be putting in? And then once they receive that information for the curbside pickup, are they having to purchase bags, or can they just put it in this curbside container and then somebody picks it up?
Well, for the residential program, we will be doing a citywide mailing in April of this year. 25% of our customers will be able to get a cart this fall, and then the rest would be in 2016, excuse me. We're going to pause over the winter because nobody wants to get an additional cart when they have to be shoveling and worrying about, you know, clearing their sidewalks of ice and snow. People do not need to purchase compostable plastic bags. Paper bags are also compostable, much like people use for their yard waste collection, the lawn and leaf ones. A standard paper grocery bag, although if it's clean, we would prefer if it went in the recycling. But we do realize there is an added cost of purchasing these bags and do accept organics to be placed in a standard paper grocery bag. On that same note, people do not need to purchase a kitchen collection container. They can use something they already have around their house, you know, like a gallon ice cream container, a coffee tin. They don't need, again, something like this. Any container they want to collect it in, so long as it works for them, it's fine with us. That we are not providing kitchen pails, as we in the recycling world like to call them, primarily because one size doesn't fit all. You know, we may like this one, someone else may want a stainless steel one. You know, someone may just want to use an open top bucket and go bring it out to their cart in a bag every night. It's really a very unique, individualized collection program that it's going to take people some time to figure out.
It is. This isn't always as simple as we'd like to think it is. Ramsey County, for example, is providing those bags free for their residents to use, but they have to bring it to all of our yard waste sites. We have 7 of them. Actually, one
Is that where they get the bags?
Yes, and they can pick the bags up there. Actually, Arden Hills is not accepting organics yet, but we do have all of our other yard waste sites accepting the organics, and we have brochures as to where they can take them and what's accepted, as well as magnets to put up on your refrigerator to remind you that it's all food scraps, coffee grounds, filters, tea bags, paper items that are not recyclable. And I think we should go over that because I think it gets a little confusing. Like, this is a typical takeout container.
And that looks recyclable.
It's paper, not plastic, but it's been recycled many times, kind of like that egg carton. So we would rather have this composted.
Well, and the other thing with paper products like this, or with, you know, your paper plates, what you're going to find on them is they're going to be covered with food residue.
Yeah.
Now that, when you go to recycle paper, also doesn't mix well and doesn't help create good, high-quality paper that can make new paper.
New
items.
paper, right.
And those paper plates are recyclable?
Paper plates are not, same thing. Anything that's food soiled, so your tissues, your napkins, your to-go containers, so long as they're not plastic lined. And these two plates here are a great example of that. So this one, yes, we see that it is labeled compostable, but if you feel it, you can tell there's no lining on it. If you look at this one, most of the printed pretty plates, unfortunately, they also, like the milk cartons, have a plastic lining on them. And they shouldn't be going in the organics. The compost facilities have told us that when this composts, there's still a plastic film that remains in the finished compost that they can't then screen out of the product, and that ends up in the compost that is then used in erosion control and gardening.
Now, and you
applications.
talk about composting for some of these. This isn't really for your backyard composting.
Correct.
This is for the composting for the programs that the cities have set up. Is that right?
Right, the drop-off for Ramsey County or the curbside that's coming for Minneapolis. It's another way to get rid of some of the waste that doesn't have to then go to be incinerated or landfilled or things like that. But again, when you say, are they recyclable, this kind of paper we don't want in the recycling bin. And so it's been going in the trash, or should be going in the trash if people are recycling correctly. As a matter of fact, if you're not sure, throw it in the trash because we don't want to contaminate the recyclables. But we're trying to give another option for what to do with some of this stuff that can't go in the recycling bin, because there's about 25% of what's left in your waste that we feel can be composted now. And so that's why we're asking if people would separate that and take it to a drop-off or put it in the curbside bin. So there are some other examples we brought on the tear test with paper, because we keep getting confused on the paper. Go ahead.
So it's a paper item. The back, you can see some shininess. If anyone's ever confused if a paper item can be recycled or if it could go in the organics, first thing is to do a tear test. And when you tear that paper, if there's a plastic lining, most of the time you're going to see that film plastic come off the paper. That means that it is neither recyclable nor compostable.
Okay.
If you don't see that lining and it's an item that is food covered, it can most likely go in the organics. Again, most of the facilities want things to get the certified compostable standards, but we're a ways away from that happening. So right now the tear test is step one. If you see the plastic, it goes in the garbage. If you don't see the plastic and you're still unsure, at this time it's best to throw it out.
So maybe, and this is probably about as elementary as we can get, but why should this matter to a person who seems like their system at home isn't broken? Why do I need to add
Good question.
another thing I have to do when I feel like it's not broken?
And
Thank
so
you.
much to remember.
Thank you for asking that. People, not only that, they often say the yuck factor. I have all this, our little plastic examples of food here. It's like you are throwing it down your garbage disposal. We kind of talked about, that's maybe not the best environmental thing to do with it. Or they're throwing it in the garbage. So they throw it in the garbage can versus they throw it in organics can or whatever. And so we're trying to say it's not that much different. But why? Why do we want to ask you to do one more separation? And that's because when this wet waste goes to the incinerator, for example, in Hennepin County, wet waste doesn't burn. We all know that. Try and light a fire to a bunch of food. It's not going to burn. And so it makes it very inefficient, that facility. And so if we can get it more efficient, it's going to be better. Or if your material goes to a landfill, that material rots and creates a gas that's not good for the environment. So it's a way to get the stuff that really can be better used as a soil amendment made into compost. That's why we're trying to encourage people. And it comes from the state is saying we've got to do a better job with all of the garbage that's getting thrown out. And if 25% of it we could compost, let's try and get people on board and do that.
So much to talk about and so much that we covered today. We could have you back again sometime. This is very interesting and very informative. Thanks for being on the show today, and stay with us. We have another guest coming up. Welcome back. In this segment, we're going to be talking about women in theater. And with us, we have Meggie Greivell, who is a director, as I understand. Welcome, Meggie.
Thank you.
It's nice to have you here with us. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Well, I'm a freelance director in the Twin Cities. I've worked as an assistant director and a director at a lot of different theater companies like Theater Unbound and Mixed Blood and Theater Pro Rata, 20% Theater, and I'm going to be working at a children's theater for the first time next fall too, so just all types of different things. And I'm originally from Wisconsin. I graduated about 3 years ago, so I'm only 3 years in the professional world, so I'm still learning and young, but it's a great place to do theater, the Twin Cities.
So you work in several different theaters?
Yes, yeah. I've worked at Theater Unbound the most, and I'm going to be working at Northern Stars Children's Theater in next August through December, so that's great.
So a lot of times when you hear about theater, you hear about, maybe a child growing up, they were very dramatic and very expressive and they loved being in front of the camera, and so they may pursue some sort of career in theater in front of the camera. How did you come to being a director and working behind the scenes?
I actually started out as an actor. When I was 13, I was in my first play, and all through high school and college, until I was a junior in college, I was adamant about being an actor. I never wanted to be a director, and I wasn't getting the roles that I really wanted, and I had a couple professors really kind of nudge me in that direction. And I was very stubborn about it. I'm like, no, that's not me. I'm not a director. And I actually was approached. I was volunteering for the campus women's center at the time, and they asked me if I would direct the vagina monologues because I was the only theater person working there. And right away I said, no, I'm not a director, but I'll act in it. And she said, you just have to, you're the only one. And I ended up doing it, and it was a life-changing experience. I really liked directing. It felt like teaching to me, and I felt more artistically satisfied.
I was saying creative, sure.
Yeah. I'm more of a visionary person. I'm a big picture person, and I get that more than I did when I was an actor. I felt kind of exposed and picked apart as an actor.
What are the things that a director does? I don't even have a clear picture in my mind of what the difference is between, like, say, a producer and a director, because they have different roles. What does a director do?
Well, in theater, it's a little different than film. In film, it's always two different roles. If you're the producer, you're giving the funds, basically.
Okay.
And sometimes the producer would be in charge of casting and hiring the director and other roles. In theater, it's sometimes separate, but often, depending on what type of theater, if you're the director, you might actually be the producer as well. In theater, we have what's known as an artistic director, which would play as producer. They're the person who runs the theater company, who hires the people. As the director, your main job is to read the play, dissect it, and come up with your director's vision for the play. And you usually would cast it, but sometimes there's a casting director. So a director sometimes would be like the casting director, the director, and the producer. And then you have to, of course, tell the actors what to do, essentially. You're the puppet master or the chef of the food creation.
You're there for every minute of that production.
Yes, and you have to tell the actors where to move with the blocking, and it's really your vision.
So, and we want to talk a little about women in theater. And I know, there's, I don't know if there's an equal percentage of, women and men that are actors, but you see a little bit of both on stage or in movies. Yes. But when you get behind the scenes, do you start to see a breakdown in the number of women that take on some of those roles, whether it's artistic director, producer? Do you start to see that we don't have as many women that are exposed, and so they don't take on those roles? Are they intimidating? Are they less marketed to women? Like, where are we behind the camera?
It's very behind, actually. It's less than 20% of women, and that's American and British theater. And that's in terms of producers, directors, and writers. And with writers, it's even lower. I think it's less than 12% of women are getting their plays published and produced. And I think it's because of a lot of different factors. I think it's one of those fields that's still, the men are still in those power roles, a lot like other fields. it's changing and it's going in the right direction, but there's still a lot of challenges because people in the theater world at these big theater companies, they're still run by men. Like, they're still calling all the shots, and it's kind of a vicious cycle because if female writers aren't getting their plays produced, then there's less likely, female directors aren't going to get hired because they want men directing these male plays, and there's less roles for men there or women, and it's kind of a cycle.
Kind of builds on itself, doesn't it?
Yes, yeah, it's and I think part of it still is too because women are still primary caregivers, and they're having families, and it's harder for them to have. It's a hard career. It's a hard lifestyle to have. In theater in general. So I think that's part of it, but it's more so just...
That makes me think of another thing. You talked about women and having their children and raising their families. Is it easier, let's say a little bit later on in life, for women to break in later in life, or is it by that time just as difficult or even more so because they didn't break into it early?
I think with directing, it's easier because I think people are more likely to take you seriously at that point. If you're a young woman, people look at you, and I've experienced this, and they say, oh, you're an actor, you're not a director, just from first glance. But with actresses, it's the opposite. The older you get, the harder it is to get work because they're, still, there's less roles, first of all, for older women, and they get judged based on their appearances more than I mean, nobody cares about what the director looks like, but
not as much. I guess that's true.
Yeah.
So with the small percentage of women working behind the scenes and actually, directing or producing the productions, are there support groups or associations that women can join as a director where you start to connect with other directors, you can start to identify a mentor, and then also maybe get more doors opened for productions that you hadn't even heard of, but you can at least, do you audition to be the director, or how does that work? But a little about the association and how do you even get the role when you're going to lead or direct a production?
Right. Well, here in the Twin Cities, there's some great theater companies for women. Theater Unbound actually only hires women directors, designers, and playwrights because of that 20% statistic, and it's a great theater company to get experience with and to be really working with great women and producing great women's work. And then there's 20% Theater Company. They also only hire transgendered women and LGBT directors as well. But in terms of how you get the work, it's really a lot about networking. The majority of the jobs I've gotten, I've not applied for. I've been asked if I would direct them. And it's really, you have to I've worked as an assistant director for a really long time. And I met all these great women directors, and they kind of helped me find my path and gave me great references. And then part of it is just asking, can I do this? And a part of it is there's networking devices like Minnesota Playlist where you put up your resume. People will go on there and look for people to hire. So it's
it's word of mouth and getting it out there, networking, and all of those things combined. Is it easier to be a freelancer? Is it difficult to get, or is there even such a thing as having a full-time job as a director at one theater in one location?
There is such a thing as that. I think when you're young, it's easier to be a freelancer because, I'm a freelancer because I want as much experience as possible. And it takes a lot of experience to get one of those full-time jobs at a theater, which is, I think, most directors' goal eventually is to get to that point. But it does exist, and it's typically at bigger theater companies, and you do have to have a lot of experience.
To get into a bigger theater company and to be there full-time, sure.
Yes.
Tell me a little bit about a typical really, really good day as a director on site, on the job, and then tell me what a bad day looks like. What's happening, when it's just not working?
Well, a great day could be a lot of different things. I think that the best times as a director are when you're just really in sync with your cast and your crew, and everyone is being a team player, and you really feel like you're creating something together. And that could mean a lot of different things, but for me, those have been the most precious moments of a director. And when we really feel like we are connecting with the art or with the community, you know, in some way. The worst times I've ever had was when you have an actor that's just difficult and likes to kind of tell you what they think and step on your toes, and that's always hard because you don't want to lose your cool or be unprofessional.
Do you have any tricks? I mean, or is it just on a individual basis how to handle a difficult actor?
I think that it's most important to stay professional and to, if it comes to it, talk to them after rehearsal and just say, you know, this isn't okay that you're doing this, and ask them why they're doing that. Like maybe they're frustrated with something I'm doing, and I've found that solves the problem by just communicating, open communication.
Finding out what's going on in their head and in their life at that moment in time.
Right.
Yeah.
Because maybe they're just not understanding what I'm saying, or they are frustrated with their role or something like that and taking it out on me.
Or maybe you need to just fire that one.
Right, yeah. Some people are just difficult, and you have to just buck it up and get through it. The show must go on.
So you mentioned that you're going to work on your first children's production coming up.
Yes.
How is that going to be different? Or in your mind, how is that going to be a different experience in the role of a director?
Well, it's going to be very different. It's going to be ages K through 12, which is very expansive age group, and a large cast of 30.
Wow.
Which I've worked with casts of 15 to 20 before, but not 30. And I've worked with kids, but only individually in regular plays. So this is a children's play. It's actually an original Nutcracker story.
Yeah,
So
that'll be fun.
yeah, I'm very excited about it, and I love working with kids. I've taught some kids some acting classes before, so it should be fun, but definitely a learning experience. With kids, you kind of have to be willing to fly at the seat of your pants a lot more. With professionals, you can prepare, you know, everything, but with kids, you can prepare as much as you want, but you never know what's going
It's
to
a
happen.
lot more fluid than with adults.
Right, yeah, which can be very fun because
Oh, yeah.
kids are very creative and they're not afraid to be bold and make bold choices.
And if someone wanted to follow your work or maybe watch one of your productions, is there a way they can get information, like for instance on this particular piece or any other pieces you're working on?
Yeah, actually, if you go to minnesotaplaylist.com and search Meggie Greivell under directors, or I think it's under production on there, you can find my resume and my current shows. And I think I don't have a website yet. That's something I need to do.
You will have.
Yeah, eventually, but I'm on Minnesota Playlist.
This has gone so fast. There's so much more that we'd like to ask you and
Yeah.
hear about. Maggie, thank you for being here. Junita, thank you.
Yes.
Thank
And
you
thank
for
you
having
for
me.
watching. And we'll see you next time.